The following readings are from the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. Each week we read from both scriptures as prescribed by Yoganandaji and by his guru, Swami Sri Yukteswarji, who is guided by Babaji to compare the two scriptures to show the same underlying truths between them. And we go kind of different weeks emphasizing one scripture more than the other, but it all evens out in the end. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Last week we asked the question, why do devotees fall? And we considered the downfall of Judas in this context. You may remember I told the story of Judas last week. Christ, in answer to Judas's criticism for allowing Mary to rub his feet with spikenard, a very costly ointment, said, "The poor always ye have with you, but me ye have not always." Christ is saying here that there is one supreme injustice that needs eradication. Poverty, yes, but not of a material kind. Poverty in a spiritual sense. Divine blessings are not common in this world. They are extraordinary. When they come, we should give them priority above every other consideration. Never allow a moment of inner joy, for instance, to be set aside for lesser duties. Divine attunement is our highest priority. As Lahiri Mahashaya, the guru of Yoganandaji's guru, said, to listen to the heart's inner sound, Om, which issues from the very center of our being, is man's highest duty. Mary on this occasion was not communing in inner silence with Christ's spirit, as she had been when Martha urged Jesus to reproach her for not helping out in the kitchen. So this is another story that happens to be about disciples serving the guru. And when we are serving the guru, there was one disciple who was busy running around like a maniac, like trying to serve everyone, like, see how I'm doing such a great job, I'm serving. And then there was another one just sitting at the guru's feet. So Martha was the one who was running around, and then Mary was the one sitting at the guru's feet meditating. And both are in action, doing action, correct? One was doing action of an inward kind, and one was doing an off-center action of the outward kind. So that's the main story. The main thing about this is the one who was doing the outward activity without being centered, Martha, she felt criticism for Mary, who was sitting at her guru's feet, and thought, it's no fair that I'm out there doing all of this. Well, you get to just sit at the guru's feet. So that's what the story is about. Sometimes these stories assume people know what they are. Mary this time was serving outwardly, but in a very different spirit from the restless fussing for which Christ had reprimanded her sister Martha. Those who see a radical difference between the paths of action and meditation should understand this distinction. To serve in the right spirit is necessary, for only thereby can we overcome our karmic tendencies toward restless activity. The important thing is that the spirit be always inwardly focused, that in everything we do, we act in loving service to the Lord. Therefore, the Bhagavad Gita says in the 3rd chapter, the state of freedom from action, that is, of eternal rest in the spirit, cannot be achieved without action. No one, by mere renunciation and outward non-involvement, can attain perfection. Whenever the Spirit of God descends upon you, however, remember the words of Christ, "Me ye have not always with you." Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
This reading is from Whispers from Eternity, by Paramhansa Yogananda, a book of prayer poems. And this one is entitled, I Demand to Return Home. Impediments beware, flee my path. I am homeward bound. Through the long corridors of time, stumbling often into pits of error, then lifted out by thy unseen hand, I have walked painfully. Discouraging darkness, barbed wire fences of habit, stony embankments of indolence, mountains of indifference, oceans of unfaithfulness, sirens of sense-longing may stand even now in my path, as if to prevent my onward march to thy palace. But 1,000,000 kingdoms and sextillions of years of unblemished worldly happiness will never tempt me again to turn away from thee. Good morning, everyone. I'm not feeling exceedingly well, so if you indulge me, I'm going to sit. This topic, How Devotees Rise, is one that we've been waiting for basically all week after getting sort of the intense Why Do Devotees Fall last week. It's almost as if we want to always put the two of them together, and whoever gives the talk the one week is saying, but tune in next week for the other side. But of course, there's lots of positivity in both, and even in How Devotees Rise, we have to talk about the challenges too. And better to talk about things, even if they're intense, because we want to be prepared. Sometimes Swamiji would say things to people that would frighten them. And he said, my wish is not to frighten you, but I want you to be prepared. I want you to be ready. And so if we ask ourselves, why do devotees fall? Meaning they can fall, we can fall. How devotees rise? Okay, so then they can also rise. We may have to ask what about the extremes? Is there an end in either direction? Can you fall so far that you sort of break through the basement and are lost forever? Or can you rise so high that you sort of go through the clouds and are finished forever? And the answer is no and yes. So you can rise so high that you're finished. We merge with God and we graduate. We're done. Just like in school, you graduate. You never see someone who's sort of 35 years old and finished with schooling saying, oh my gosh, I have to go back and take another exam. I hear there's a chemistry test. When they hear there's a chemistry test, they go, ha 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 ha. Enjoy it, because I am done. We had someone actually who was a professor who came to one of our friends in America, and this is just a difference in American and English, American and Indian English, which are both versions of English. And he said to one of our friends at Ananda Village, because since he was in California, he thought he might visit his student in San Jose, and which is spelled Jose. And he said, I have a student who has passed out in San Jose. And of course, for him, he meant graduated, and for her, she thought he meant he had fainted. The student had fainted. Sort of, what can we do about it? Do you want to send an ambulance? And he had a perfect natural smile, and she thought, shouldn't we be more concerned if he's passed out? So anyway, it's just fun sometimes when we think we're communicating with each other. But Swamiji was... so we can rise and then we can be done. And can we fall and be lost forever? No. That's the good news of why do devotees fall. It doesn't really matter in one sense because you can't fall forever. We all will end up back in God. And I could explain why and all that, but, just to say very briefly, because of the law of duality, everything that goes this way has to go that way. Because we came from God, we eventually have to return to Him. Eventually, whether kicking and screaming or whether full of joy, everybody ends up back in God. Everybody. Which means, first of all, don't worry about yourself. You'll get there. And it also means don't worry about anybody else. They will get there too. Suppose they are in the kicking and screaming mode. That's okay. Suppose they're not interested in any of this. There was the man who You've heard the story. Swamiji said, he met Swamiji and he said, "Do you think I need a guru?" Somewhat challengingly. He was the father of one of our members. And that's how he came to meet Swamiji. And Swamiji said, "No, not at all. Of course you don't need a guru." And the man, exactly what I thought. And Swamiji said, "Until you want God, you don't need a guru." And I don't know if the man sort of paused or if the man said, "Excellent, because I don't want God, so I don't need a guru." I don't know. But that man was a high-level executive. I told this story partially last week, but didn't finish it. He was a board member on a very well-known company. And again, very happy to let you know that also when you met him. And not the CEO. He's the one who hires the CEO. I am the king maker. You know. Okay, fine. But then who made the kingdom and who made you and everything else? You know, the real king. So anyway, one person, the daughter of the U.S. president, met one of the monks at SRF, and he met her and said, "Nice to meet you," and he didn't sort of give her perhaps the reception she expected. So she said, "My father is president of the United States." And he said, "Nice to meet you. My father is master of the universe." So he was a monk, one of Master's disciples, Swamiji, and they got along extremely well. This man, his wife became ill, and on top of her illness, unfortunately, she had a bad reaction to medication, which made her extremely ill in ways that I can describe, but not in mixed company. It was really disturbing. You know, even just visually to see what was happening to her. And all of his money and all of his power, he said, he couldn't do anything. There was nothing he could do to help her. And he loved his wife. And so he was faced with his own helplessness, and he just asked, his daughter said, "I will send it out to the healing prayer list," and everybody prayed out of love for her. Of course, they wanted to pray for her mother. They would pray anyway, but I just mean there was a heart connection in it. And the doctor said there is no hope. And little by little, she started to improve and she recovered and she was completely fine. They said at any moment she could get an infection and that would be it. And she didn't. She didn't get sick. Another sickness that would have been a real problem. She was fine. And he was so amazed and so humbled, again, by his inability to do anything in this situation, and he was convinced that the prayers helped and that there was a higher power. And so it was very touching to see the transformation in him while it lasted. So, can't help it. It's true. But it's true for all of us. We for a while and then So, when Swamiji was with Master, pardon me, I have to set a timer here so we don't go on and embrace infinity. When Swamiji was with Master, they were sitting together after Master had edited dictated some of the Bhagavad Gita commentaries. And Master put this question to Swamiji, which you would have seen in the Answer movie and also read in the New Path. Master said, "What keeps the earth from shooting off into space?" And Swamiji said, thinking perhaps Master was asking him about astronomy, said, "Well, it's the gravitational pull of the sun that prevents the earth from going off." And then, so Master said, "Well, then what prevents the earth from falling into the sun?" And Swamiji said, "Well, it's the centrifugal force of the earth's movement that's always keeping it sort of pulling away." And centrifugal means center fleeing, running away from the center. And so Master then smiled. And Swamiji wondered, I guess, covered that topic sufficiently. But he wondered, as he often had, he would say to us all the time that I will meditate certainly on things Master said and what he did, but sometimes I would just meditate on a glance. And in this case, a smile. Master smiled significantly. And he wondered, well, why did he smile? And it occurred to him much later that that what Master was saying was what keeps man from merging with God is that man is always pulling away. And more than man, more than humankind, it's the ego. The ego is always pulling away. And yet what prevents the ego from being lost forever is that God is always calling and pulling. And it ends with the earth merging back in the sun, which is good news in this case. That the ego, the soul does merge back into God. And that's how it ends up. So in terms of why do devotees fall, it's just very simple if you want to sort of look at ourselves or understand it philosophically. It's the ego. It is the ego pulling away. That's what it means to fall. It isn't even really falling, it's going far away from God. And why do we say it is falling is because it is uncomfortable. It is unpleasant. It ends in unhappiness. And that's the only reason, really. That which is bad takes us away from God, and that which is good takes us toward God. And that's a very important and helpful definition of good and bad. Because we can look at those things that happened in our lives, the very bad things, for example. I can think of the one of the first really bad things that happened to me that was an event, for sort of a bad event as opposed to just constant bad. Because sometimes when we grow up in a difficult situation, we don't even know it's difficult. It's all we've ever known. It's like living on a planet where the gravity is really heavy, but it's all we've ever used to. And it's only when we go out of that we start to discover, oh my gosh, it's not everyone's experience, or just the opposite. Some people dee-dee-dee-dee-dee and suddenly smack into their first difficulty. And we all have these challenges. Why? To grow. Otherwise, what do? If we don't grow, what happens? Nothing. Just eventually end the life and start again in LKG. I mean, can you imagine? Even now. Nalaki's lesson, e, u. Again. Solinga. You say, look, I've gone pretty far past e, and the other thing. And who wants to do that all over again? Exactly. Who wants to do it all over again? This is why we want out. But again, we can't just want out. I just want to be done with it. It's also that we want in with God. We have to have that positive wish also. And we can sometimes feel strange among others that we know, others in our daily life, because we do love God, because we do want God, and it isn't the case that everybody does, or that if you talk about loving God, everyone says, yes, definitely, that's what I love most of all. Sometimes you can't talk about it at all. I was talking with a friend of mine who had some time ago went and had a delightful time with his relatives. And when he came back, he said, I'm so glad to be back in Chennai. Because I spent all of today talking to people about loving God. And for that whole time of that vacation with my family, I didn't talk much about loving God. And so that's why it's good to take a break sometimes when you have to. You have to go visit someone because it makes you come running back. Whew! Other way down. So as I said, we can feel strange, or we can feel like the odd one out because we do love God and we can't even always talk about it. But the thing is, everybody wants God ultimately. This is one thing Swamiji had this realization one night when he was in a hotel meditating in, I think it was in Italy, in Milan, or Florence, one of the two. He was saying that he realized that everybody is following their own pathway to bliss, perhaps wanting it in some lesser form. Wanting, for example, like that one executive, wanting wealth and power because of the thrill that it gave him. I met the CEO of a well-known technology company in America, and I was already at Ananda, but he had heard that I went to MIT, and he was saying maybe I could hire you. And I said thanks, but I'm already hired. I'm already, He said, I assume you would have left. You would have your reasons. And I was teaching at the Ananda Palo Alto School as a school teacher at the time, living in the community, with Dharmini. And he said, my wife is a school teacher, so I can tell you. I mean, it's a noble profession. And I spent a lot of time. Nobody works harder than teachers, which teachers will always kind of, that's right. And so he said, I think teaching's great. I'd love to teach. But, this being the CEO, working in this field, it's just like drugs in my veins right now. So I said, well, I'll leave you to it. So, it was, but again, that thrill that he was getting, it was still a thrill. It was a joy of a sort, and that is what God is. So what happens is we find out that joy, once we get it, is not enough. And so let's try this, let's try that, and eventually we find that joy that is enough is God. So in other words, everybody is seeking God just like you. Maybe not exactly in the way that you are, but they are also seeking. So you don't have to feel separate. It doesn't mean you can necessarily bring it up, that what you're actually doing with that PowerPoint presentation is seeking God. Maybe it's not time for that yet, but you can know it and therefore feel a connection to everybody rather than a separation from everyone. I have to just keep myself protected. On one level we do, but only because it means we have to watch what we say. And for the other person's sake too. You don't want to irritate people, which is to say turn them against a positive thing when they're not ready for it. Why? Because when they are ready for it, they will have been turned against it. They already have a prejudice. Suppose someone this was happened to a friend of ours, he was always saying to his family, I meditate and so should you. Constantly. So finally, you can imagine by the time one of them goes somewhere else and goes to a doctor and has heart problems, and the doctor says, why don't you meditate? Don't you say that word. Because they've been so prejudiced against it. So it's better not to offer things prematurely, especially out of our need to say it. If we have a need to share our enthusiasm with meditation, and if no one is around to hear it, share it with God. That's the best thing anyway. As Master said, when you're with people, be with people. And when you're not with them, just say, I and my God. I and my God alone. Swamiji said he had the habit of talking a lot, which Master, pointed out to him later. But he said he gradually followed Master's example of silence, and he learned to talk less and to listen more to the soundless whispers of his soul, of God, even of Master inside. So in other words, when we're talking a lot, it's not a bad thing in itself, but it can be restless, it can waste energy, or we can end up saying things we don't mean. Now suppose you say, yes, that's why I never talk. Well, then you should talk. In other words, it should be balanced. Some people they'll never talk. And it's fine. It's a good way to fake being spiritual. And but the thing is that we want to have a lot of that talk be with God. It's a perfect way. God will never complain that you're talking to me too much. There was a beautiful story of Master sitting next to his nephew rather. And his nephew was eating, and Master was eating. This was in India, but the nephew was talking to the person on the other side of him, and he had been saving his shandesh, and for last. And when he looked at his plate, he saw it was gone. But he knew his uncle, and so he didn't say he wasn't going to fall for the trap, so he didn't say anything. And so that he was continuing on talking to the person. Then he looked, and he saw that the shandesh was back. So then he looked at Master, and Master said, you'll talk to everyone, but you won't talk to me. I mean, just imagine. I mean, you're sitting next to Master. I mean, let the whole rest of the group, whatever, just... And so, but remember, Master is saying that to all of us, not as a criticism, not as a reprimand, saying, talk to me. I'm right here. I'm talking to you. Remember, he's interested. He wants you. God is pulling us with his gravitational pull. You know, we may feel like we're a planet wandering around looking for a star. No such, that's not true. No such luck. It would be bad luck. We're with the Son of God constantly pulling at us, constantly. We just need to stop resisting. And that's the way that we rise, by breaking down that resistance. I can't help but mention there was a friend of ours who was doing a workshop on working through inner resistances. And there was a lot of talk about inner resistance. You know, it's a serious thing. Inner resistance, I just said it was the only thing keeping us from God. It's really the ego resisting. So fine, it's true. But so in this workshop, what everybody did was they came up with these different weights or something. And he knows the story better, so when it sounds really garbled, ask him, what was the actual story? But anyway, I'm piecing it together from my memory. They had these different little weights with holes in them that you could put a string through. And so they were tying this string to ends to secure it to something and whatever. Maybe there was a loop on one. And the idea was, once everybody had come up with their collection of weights and what they represented, you know, my pride, my restlessness, my spiritual laziness, all of these things, each person contributed their set of inner resistance weights to this string. And then they were all there lined up, and someone said, now let's take turns, each one of us approaching the string and seeing what we could remove. Whether it's our own inner resistance or maybe someone else's. Maybe you could help someone else with their inner resistance. And so our friend went first, and he took the string off the end and let it fall, and they all fell off. It's just perfect. It's brilliant. It's just get rid of the ego, the string that holds everything, and it's all over. Sadly enough, not everybody at the workshop even understood that. Some of them even criticized him for it. What's the matter with you? You've got to take this seriously. I think it was sort of sailed over their heads. So we have to understand that whatever we can do to reduce the ego will help. And you can do that in kind of a negative way, in the sense of resisting the ego's bad habits and so on. But you can do it also in a positive way, which is just loving God so much that we just don't care that much about ourselves and this thing and so on. Now, we have to always be appropriate. We can't say, if someone says, nah, to us, and we, oh, it hurts, but you know, it's only the ego that hurts, and it's actually an emotion, and I am a devotee that sails above emotion, and so I just am in God all the time. And it's just, if that's not true, it's not true, and it doesn't serve us to pretend that it's not true. There's nothing wrong with feeling. In fact, feeling is what leads us to God. Feeling is the most important thing. So it's never that we should think of feeling or even emotion, which for most of us is the precursor to feeling, as some sort of bad thing. It's silly to think so and impractical. Swamiji said it's kind of a bummer when you meet someone who's too drenched in the philosophy in a theoretical way. You know, you might say, isn't that a beautiful blue? And the person says, the only colors I follow are the colors of the chakras. You know, it's just kind of a downer. You know, I had this backfire on me the other day. I said, we were having a meal together, and I stood up before the meal, and I said, before we eat, I would like to just give a brief discourse on the chakras. It should last about 2 hours. And I said, just kidding. And ha, ha, ha. But one person came up to me after, you said something about chakras? And the chakras, what, you know? I said, just eat, you know. That was a joke. You know, we have to be appropriate. That's the thing that Swamiji said he loved about Autobiography of a Yogi, reading Master's words. Master's appropriate, perfect response to every situation. Even someone who told him, you will find one day, you and these fools that love God, you will find that there is no God. And what will you say when you wake up and find out that you've been living a lie this whole time? And Master said, at least we will have the satisfaction of knowing that we've done some good. helping some people to feel peace, serving others, and so on. He didn't argue with the man's philosophy. One other man said, because you do not follow my religion, you are going to hell. You can guess what religion. And the man and master said, well, I may get there by and by, but you are there already. Because the man was so mad about it. That is hell. And why do people sometimes speak of an eternal hell? Master explained, because when you are so caught up in these angry or upset emotions or pain, it feels like it will go on forever. That's the true meaning of what eternal means, is that it feels eternal. It isn't eternal at all. But so we just have to love God. We just have to find ways to love God more and not to get too caught up in that. And it can be confusing. When I first got onto the spiritual path or started asking spiritual questions, a friend of mine was saying, you need, now that you know you're seeking God, you need to pray. And I said, I don't know how to pray. I've never done it. Just sort of, Lord, our Father, Om Bhur Bhuva, how do you pray? I don't know how. And she said, you know how to pray. And I thought, okay, maybe I do. And then I realized that there were times when I was desperate for things. I don't know if I prayed exactly, but I did say, I am desperate for things. I'm in trouble here. And so I realized that I could pray in whatever way I wanted to. It didn't have to be, accepted or approved or agreed upon. And the same thing is true for us, for example, in the case of worshiping Divine Mother. Some people, why did Master say worship Divine Mother? He said because the mother is closer than the father. Now, you could say even that Master was correcting the thought of too much worshiping God as Father, which is very common in many places. But in America, for example, not America, in the West, in Christianity, the worship of God as Father was really promoted by Jesus. And so was Master saying, oh, that's wrong? No, of course not. But and why did Jesus say worship God as Father? Because the people he was talking to thought of God as just a judge. God is just a policeman up there with the white hat, and he's just waiting to give you a ticket or take a little something if you don't want a ticket. You see, that God's only purpose is to get you in trouble when you break the rules. And Jesus said God is your own Father. He's not a judge. I mean, even a judge, if his own son comes before him, and he's a good father, wouldn't he have compassion? And Jesus said, if you ask of your father some bread, will he give you a stone? Say, Appa, just chapati, and he says, have a stone instead. Now, of course, you have to say, well, it kind of depends on the Father. But anyway, never mind. not the Heavenly Father. But no one asks, if you ask Amma for a chapati, will she give you a stone? We know the answer for that, again, in most cases. So the point is, Judge isn't as good. Father is better because he's closer. Mother is even closer. And is it helpful to worship God in this way? Because when you approach him as God as Mother, then he says, well, if you put it that way, then I'll be nice to you. If you approach me with an open heart, then I will take an interest? No. He has an interest all the time. Constantly, his interest is there. That's the pull. That's pulling us towards him. It's that when we approach him in a way that we can be more open, we can be more trusting. Appa has said, you are punished and there is no food. And Amma says, absolutely no food, just dosa and a little roti and maybe just a little avial or something. We'll slide it under the door, if you're sent to your room. So she bends the rules. And so approach God as Divine Mother as someone who bends the rules. But you can ask, okay, Divine Mother, but there are so many forms of Divine Mother. Which form should I worship? The one that you love, or no form. Suppose you had a very loving mother, or have. Think of Divine Mother as loving you through that mother, that human love was an example of God's love. And even if you've lost that mother on earth, you know you haven't lost Divine Mother, and even your own mother too. I'm sure she's looking after you and helping. There was this one movie that had this funny scene where this son was talking to his mother, and his mother was quite old, and then she died, and then she had a full life, but then the son got into some kind of trouble, and so he couldn't go to heaven, and he was sort of trapped in this in-between state. And some angels finally came and said, we're bringing you to heaven because your mother is creating such a fuss up there that she won't let us rest until we bring you in. So just come on. So, you can imagine, of course, that's Divine Mother too. She's making a fuss over you. But the thing is that suppose you didn't have such a great human mother. I mean, everybody does their best, but I mean, statistically, not everyone's going to have a perfect mother. And sometimes that's part of our lesson. But all the things that we would have wanted from that mother, we can say, well, Divine Mother can give that to me. I was seeking that in Divine Mother. This, human channel was just doing its best. And again, this comes back to what I say about bad and versus good. Bad takes us away from God. Good takes us toward God. I didn't finish my story. I had the first really difficult event in my life, which I called bad, meaning I don't like. That's usually what bad means. I don't like. That has nothing to do with the sort of truth or the validity or the dharma of a situation, whether we like it or not. And so it was that situation that put me on the spiritual path. It was that suffering that made me say, is there any kind of true happiness in this world? Is there anything lasting? I'm starting to discover that it doesn't come through people. And because that was the nature of my suffering, was betrayal by a person. And that's what made me realize, because I knew there had to be some love, there had to be some joy. I felt it, I wanted it. I couldn't accept, no, it doesn't exist. Sorry, wrong planet. No, it does. And so that's what made me ask, where could it come from? And a friend of mine said, it comes from God. And I said, whoa, that's a new one. And that's what made me seek spiritually. So could I then say that tragic event of my young life was so bad when it actually knocked some sense into me, set me straight, put me on the path that then I followed ever since? Of course it wasn't bad. It was a gift. But as I say, we have to balance these two. We can't pretend we don't have hurt feelings when we do. It doesn't help us. That's called a spiritual bypass. Or if that's too complicated, just think fake. That's what it is. It's fake. Just pretending. We should always start with where we are and share that, whatever it is, with God. God, I'm upset. I wish I weren't, but I am. Or can you help me? Why did you let me get into this trouble? Imagine a child getting hurt and then saying to the mother, why didn't you protect me more? In the case of saying that to Divine Mother, that's correct. It is correct. Anything we can do to be open to God. And remember also, one man sort of took it too far. He said, I think I've learned, or what you all are saying, is that anything I do right, God did it through me. And anything that I did wrong, that was me, myself. And that's not the teaching. Okay? God does everything through everybody. So yes, He does even the bad through us. And as Master said, what about the bad? Forget the bad. Leave that in the past. It's today. Start from today and go forward. I mean, if we really want to tally up the balance sheet of good and bad, we could look at all of the incarnations. But you could say, yeah, and I bet they're full of bad. Oh. Well, but then how are you here? Huh? How are you seeking God? It takes very, very, very good karma, Master said, to seek God. That's what Dharmini was saying last week. So for us to feel that we're seeking God means very good karma, that we have kriya in this life, or almost have kriya. If you don't have it yet, get it. Is obviously very good karma. Someone said to a friend of ours, a devotee, he said, you were with the Master in the past. He had some Sanskrit words for basically the direct guru and then the Maha Guru, meaning Yogananda and Babaji, you were with them in the past, which of course all of us want to hear and say, thank you very much. I don't know if it's true, but I appreciate hearing it and all that. But he said then, That is why you have so much faith in the Kriya Yoga. And I heard that and I thought, that's why you have faith in the Kriya Yoga? Like, is Kriya Yoga something you have faith in? I mean, there's no question of faith, it's just fact. I mean, it's obvious that Kriya works. I mean, do you have faith in sunshine and gravity and air? I mean, I really believe in the air. No, there's no need to believe or have faith. They're just facts. But that's what I realized, that meant I had faith in Kriya. And I never even questioned it. I read it in Autobiography of a Yogi, Kriya Yoga, definitely, that's what I want. Where is it? Read the whole book. It wasn't in the book somehow. And so then found out how to get it. But, I never doubted it for a moment. I have to say, I did doubt. I wondered if it would work for me. Sort of like you take this medicine that works for everybody, but it doesn't work for you because you're just too sick. That's the fear that I had. But the first night, after the initiation, the first night that I did Kriya on my own, something was different. And it worked. And I was not disappointed. Again, not disappointed for myself. I was never doubting the Kriya. So, in whatever we do, let's find ways to love God more. One way is to read Master's words a little bit every day, because it wakes us up. We think we know, and then we read anything that he says, and, oh, wow, that's inspiring. And it's sort of, again, we find the eyes are open, and only now then we realize that they were shut. Because a lot of the time, we're going, every day we sort of have to fight the battle to lift ourselves up. It's not so much going down, it's more just the pull of habit kind of bringing us back down. And so just a little reading, a little study, just that helps. Another thing is doing what we do every week, like this, getting together for satsang. Just being with each other, we can let our guard down. We don't have to say, people say, what is your hobby? It's like, my hobby is God. Waiting for the arrows to be shot at you. No, here, fine. Well, we all have the same hobby. You could say, I'm going to my hobby club on Sunday. And one woman was challenged by her uncle, why do you go all the way to CIT Nagar? In that case, it was Alwarpet. Why do you go all the way to Alwarpet for yoga? We have yoga just down the road. You do yoga here. Then you'll have more time to serve me. And she said, no, I go there for prayers. For prayers for the family. Oh, please go. He figured if he could get some prayers out of the deal and he didn't have to pray, then that's pretty good. So in the same way, we can be open here. We can be with other lovers of God. As Master said, whoever will see your eyes will change as you love God and as people feel that from you. At the very least, people will feel more comfortable with you over time. And our job is to be more comfortable with people. It doesn't mean buying into everything that they say, but it also doesn't mean arguing with everything they say either. As I've often said, if somebody's just talking too much negativity, feed them or give them tea, because it'll shut them up for a little bit, Take your time, But the other side of it is that, one very simple technique in the beginning is silence. If we have a habit of arguing with everything that everybody says because it bothers us so much that they're saying it, saying something doesn't make it true. Saying it loudly doesn't make it truer. If we know it's not true, why do we bother? I had a lot of untrue things shoved down my throat that I felt weren't true, meaning they didn't lead to happiness. You should live only this way and not the way you're trying to live. And I just knew it wasn't right for me, or to be fair, I would say it would not lead to my happiness. But the argument given was, I think so, and so do we all. And so when I heard some of the wonderful things in Autobiography of a Yogi, that, for example, when Sri Yukteswar said to Master, you should get an astrological bangle. And Master said, should I? I don't believe in astrology. And Sri Yukteswarji said, it is never a question of belief. It is only matters what is true. He said the universe would be fairly chaotic if its laws could not operate without the sanction of human belief. I mean, he said the law of gravity operated just as effectively before Newton as after. So we're not believing in something. It has nothing to do with, we argued once about if someone said two people debating the existence of God is sort of like two unborn twins inside the tummy arguing about the existence of the mother. So I thought that was a rather fun example. But you don't, again, if someone really doesn't believe in God, don't argue with them. In other words, find some common ground. One man was saying to Swamiji, I'm an atheist, I'm an atheist, I'm an atheist. And Swamiji was driving him home, and there was someone else in the car with them. And she, right before she got out of the car, she said, I don't believe in love. I imagine it was related to some conversation, as opposed to she just sounded off after 5 minutes, I don't believe in love. But she said it, and she left the car. And the atheist turned to Swamiji, and he said, can you imagine not believing in love? And Swamiji said, and you call yourself an atheist? Many people, they believe, one person said, I don't believe in any God, I only believe in divine energy. Okay. Call it whatever you want. That's part of the problem. It's, when it's called what you don't want, you get confused. You call it what you want. You worship Divine Mother in your way. Whatever way you make up that works. If the vision of Divine Mother you have is always looking stern and going, that doesn't work. That's not right, because it's not true. Listen, if God wanted us never to fail, He's going to have to go to some other planet. He's going to have to work with some other group of people. We're doing the best we can. At least we're wanting Him. So don't tally up your mistakes or any of that. That's actually the ego. If the ego can't get us by saying you're so good, it will trap us by saying you're so bad. You see? Either way, it's a trap. We are who we are. And we just need to take our step from here closer to God. And sometimes that means just relaxing. Just not being so rigid and intense about things. Sometimes it means working hard on meditation. So in other words, sometimes we need a tough voice in our head to say, come on. And sometimes we need a gentle voice in our head saying that's okay. And how do you know which you need? Whatever is the opposite of what you usually hear. So if you hear, you're terrible, then you need a break from that. And if you hear, it's excellent, you can do counterfeit samadhi, sleep your way to heaven, let's do some energization and get moving. As Dharmini said, get off our seats, get off our behinds and get moving. Master said, when you meditate with God, mean business. Show God you mean business. But again, balance the inner voice with the opposite, okay? So anything unkind, hear kindness. And if all you ever hear is gentle, you're so amazing and people should have to buy tickets to be in your presence. No. Okay? We heard that the other day. It was something odd. The person said, my favorite person is me. And I was confused. I thought, something's wrong with this ear. I didn't get. And then he kept on. Yeah, out of everybody I've met, my favorite person is me, and everybody likes me, and I like everybody. But Ashwini and I were teaching the class. I even turned to her later. Did he really say that? I've never heard that before. She said, yeah, he said that. I thought, wow, do something new every day, but that's not a good one. So anyway, if you say my favorite person is the immortal soul within me, fine, but I don't think that's what he meant. So anyway, let's be glad of ourselves, be at peace with ourselves, but our favorite person should be who? Not him or maybe someone else? Of course, God. You know why? Because you're God's favorite person. It's really that simple. So let's work on that love. That's how we rise. Put ourselves in this kind of positive environment. Put yourself in that environment at home through your sadhana. Be patient with other people. Try to find points of connection as opposed to separation. Also, again, study, because we can't get there on our own. We need Master to lift us up a little bit each day. As Dharmini was saying earlier during the reading, serving others just helps us get out of ourselves, forget ourselves, so we're not even thinking about ourselves, and that helps too, because not thinking about ourselves allows us to think of God, allows us to expand. And also remember, if you don't have an easy way to visualize God or Divine Mother or feel God or feel close to God, then just worship and love God as the Guru. Think of how much the Guru has given you. And out of love and out of interest. I don't mean he was handing out, sort of, here's a Hong Sao for you, and a Hong Sao for you, and a Hong Sao for you, and go off with it and do what you will. No. He sits with you alone. And remember that. Because it's easy how we can get distracted by that. I was feeling a little poignant in my heart when Dharmini was reading about how never let, divine blessings are rare in this life. Do not ever neglect them for lesser duties. I had in a time when Swamiji and I brought a group of people to see Swamiji, or I was with a group of people to see Swamiji. And then at the end of it, everybody left because there was he said, you have your event to go to, you should go. And I was just, we had been recording it, and I was closing up the camera. And I happened to be the last one there. And he said, why don't you sit? And I'd like to read to you from Living Wisely, Living Well. I just finished this month of sayings, whatever month it was, August or something. I'd like to read them to you. And so he gave them to me, and I started reading them, and I loved them. But I was, in the back of my mind, there was a duty I had to do for the event, and they were expecting me. And so I said, oh, Swamiji, I probably should go for the event. He said, read another one. So then I read another one, and I said, oh, it's so wonderful, and really how you've put it, but I probably should go. And he said, read another one. So I read another one, and then I said I probably should go again, not somehow getting it. And he said, oh, well, why don't you go? And it took me a while to just think, especially after his passing, oh my God, the microphone would have been moved by someone. It didn't have to be me. If the speaker was there and there wasn't a microphone, it could probably be solved. And what did I have to go to that was so important than just being with him? But that has helped me in other situations. When blessings come, just savor them and let the rest of the chores, just whatever. Let them take care of themselves. Okay? And we'll be in God soon enough. God bless you.